sentence diagram number 4, we're going to look at the following example. Because the students are not in school today, Mrs. Martinez, the 8th grade science teacher, has agreed to meet with the principal, whose son is struggling in science. And later the two women are going to have dinner together at a fancy restaurant. Now let's take a look at this example. And I want to begin by looking first at the main clauses. So if we identify the first main clause, Mrs. Martinez has agreed, and then we look at the second main clause, later the two women are going to have dinner together at a fancy restaurant, we see that both of these are connected with the coordinating conjunction and. The first main clause, Mrs. Martinez, has an appositive teacher. So we have the 8th grade science teacher as our appositive, which is set off by commas. We have a comma before and after the appositive. So we have the head noun teacher along with the definite article the, and then we have adjectives and adverbs here, science and 8th, diagrammed as follows. We have the verb phrase has agreed, which is our present perfect verb tense, followed by to meet, which is our to infinitive functioning as an adverb, answering the question, why did she agree? Right? So this answers the question why. We have the prepositional phrase with the principal to answer the question with whom did they meet? So this is going to go under the object of the preposition meet. And then we're going to have a relative clause, and the pronoun whose, right? Now I want to bring this, I want to show you a couple of things here. So this pronoun whose, in this case it's going to begin a relative pronoun, but it shows possession. And sometimes you'll see whose also as a possessive adjective, as in the case here where we have whose presence, people whose presence calls forth the best. So if don't get confused if you label it as a possessive adjective or as a possessive pronoun. It does begin a relative clause, however, and just remember that it does show possession. Again, here's another example where you have whose, right? Whose mother is a nurse. The boy whose mother is a nurse. This is another example of using whose as a possessive adjective or possessive pronoun that begins a relative clause. Okay, so let's continue on. We have whose, which is going to modify son. Then we have the verb phrase is struggling, which is present continuous. Then we have the prepositional phrase in science, which is answering the question where or when. When is the son struggling? Well, in science, specifically science class. Okay, so now we look at our second main clause. Later, the two women are going to have dinner together at a fancy restaurant. So we have the noun women functioning as the subject, along with the verb phrase are going to have. Now be careful here, because one of the ways that we form the future tense is with are going or is going to, and then the verb is going to have, is going to eat, is going to live, but all of that is the verb. So even though we include a riser here to have up above are going, don't treat this as an infinitive. This is actually part of the verb phrase, and we're not going to have a line after are going that we normally would have to indicate a direct object. That line is going to occur, in fact, after to have, as it does here. So in this example, dinner is going to be our direct object, and our verb phrase is going to be are going to have. We have the adverb together that's going to go under the verb to have, and at a fancy restaurant is going to be a prepositional phrase that answers the question where. That's also going to go under the verb. At is the preposition, restaurant is the object of the preposition or the noun, A's are indefinite article, and fancies are adjective. Now the question becomes, what do we do with this clause because the students are not in school today, this subordinating clause? The question is, do we link it to the first main clause or the second main clause? And I would ask that you put together the subordinating clause with each of the main clauses to see which one makes the most sense. So if we use the first clause, Mrs. Martinez has agreed to meet with the principal because students are not in school today, or the two women are not going to have dinner because the students are not in school today. I would argue the second would be the most appropriate to label or to connect to the verb phrase are going to have. Okay. Also by, so here we have, because this is going to be our subordinating conjunction, we have students, our noun, that's going to be our subject, and then we have the linking verb are. We have adverbs not. We have the prepositional phrase in school that's going to function as an adverb answering the question where, and we also have the adverb today. All right, so I hope this helps. If you do have questions about this analysis, feel free to leave a comment in Microsoft Teams. If you need further explanation, feel free to also come by my office and we can discuss it. Remember that tomorrow is going to be our first analysis that you're going to do as individually, and we're going to do the same on Friday. You can use your notes in both cases. And remember also on Thursday, we're going to have a TOEFL exam. This is going to be for practice. It's not for a grade, but do show up on time so that we can begin on time. And both ProPay groups are going to be applying the TOEFL exam. And so we want to make sure that you have plenty of time to complete the exam. All right, so we'll see everybody in class tomorrow. Again, let me know if you do have any questions about today's analysis or any other of the other analyses that we've completed since last Thursday.